Mike Farrar, you are President-Elect. Is that right? Or
That's
elected
correct.
president? President-elect, recently elected.
Right.
For the American Meteorological Society, which makes you an important person here. But you're also an important person in your day job, right? With the Air Force as the chief weather for weather science or
Right.
research, right?
Correct.
For operations.
Right. So we have our at the headquarters Air Force. There's a Directorate of Weather. It falls under the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. So at that level at the Air Force, we do kind of the overall management of the weather career field in the Air Force. And so there are certain functions there: policy, resources and budgeting, training and workforce development, plans, those kind of managing interagency partnerships. So most of those are managed by different divisions under that. But about a year and a half ago, the Director of Weather at that point noted that, for all the science partnerships we have and some of the things that we need to do, he looked back in history of the Air Force Weather and decided to recreate the chief scientist position up there. For a long time ago, when we were the Air Weather Service, which was actually predates the Air Force, there were plenty of chief scientists because we had a lot of critical mass in that. But over time, back in the 90s, we broke up, disaggregated, and that was lost. So he felt that there was a little bit of a lack of science leadership at the Pentagon level and across the career field. So he decided to go ahead and create that position. I was fortunate enough when I was moving back into the D.C. area and thinking about that, and it turned out it was open right at the right time, and I was able to take my prior Air Force background when I was an officer and my other science and R&D efforts that I'd done since then, and to bring that back into the Air Force. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Because you after you left the Air Force, you went to NOAA and also UCAR.
Well, there's a missing piece there.
Was there a missing piece there?
That was close. So after I left the Air Force, I went into the private sector, and I wanted to do something different. I've been doing meteorology in the Air Force for over 20 years. So I wanted to do something different. So I was fortunate enough to get hired as a Vice President of Business Development for a small medium company called Science and Technology Corporation, or STC, that has its lineage that it is founded around NASA Langley Research Center in Hampton. So it's a scientific services company. So it wasn't weather, but I was still science-based. So I spent 2 years doing that. But it was one of those jobs where you go write proposals and go for new business, and you're thanked by getting it by turning around and looking for more. So it was a grind, but I learned a whole lot about how the private sector, particularly the government contracting business, works. But after that, one of my former bosses in the Air Force, who then became one of the executives of the Weather Service, John Murphy, who's today the Chief Operating Officer, called me up and said, "I got a vacant position you might want to look at," and ended up going there in around 2012. And worked in the Weather Service for 5 years. And so then some time at UCAR, and then my wife was going to join me out there, and that didn't work out. So we decided to reset back in D.C. So I came back, and as I was thinking about that, there were a few opportunities, but this one kind of intrigued me because it was science, it was in leadership, and it was also a new job. So I could kind of forge my own path, and that was that was the thing that got me. And also the fact that it was not a bad commute in the D.C. area where I'm living. So
that sounds good.
That's actually, if you live in D.C. area or
yes.
Boston or any place like that, it makes a difference.
Yeah, D.C. especially these days. What are you doing in that job in terms of creating, in terms of meeting the science needs for the Air Force? What kinds of opportunities were there that need to be filled?
Sure. Well, I have to start with a little bit of history, and it started with not a good news story. Similar to people are familiar with DoD now, the Navy has a pretty robust R&D capability through their naval research labs, and so they have a weather program in there. It's been around for a long time. Some of my friends work at NRL, and either in DC or out in Monterey. The Air Force used to have such a thing too, but back in the 90s it was disbanded. Not because weather wasn't important at the Air Force at that time, but it was all about money, and there were other priorities. And they looked around and said, well, the Navy's doing weather research, NOAA's doing weather research, NASA's doing weather research. Go partner, we're taking your money to do things more important. So that was kind of a culture change and a shock to the system for us in the Air Force back then. But like I said, it started as a bad news story, but I think over time it's been a good news story because we've been forced to effectively partner with people, not just with the Navy, but NASA, NOAA, international partners, and then new places like Department of Energy, NCAR. There's a lot of places we partner now. So I think we're the best value per dollar because we effectively partner with a lot of the experts. We bring in some extra funds. We help bring it in and make it specific to our operation. So we're able to get world-class stuff without having to pay for all of it. So it's worked effectively with us. So it's also that kind of mentality is what really has been that part of my career, which is partnering. That's been what's driven my whole R&D career. My first job that I worked with NCAR was back in 1998 when we got rid of our old model and we brought in MM5 operationally, and then I was able to see that through to the end, and then started our partnership with WARF, which lasted for many years.
You were still at the Air Force at that time?
I was a major back then.
You retired a colonel, right?
I retired a colonel many years later, but that was when I was a major. And
this is why you don't get a security detail as AMS president, because you're your own security detail. So.
No, that doesn't work though.
Okay, let's check it.
No.
So the partnering sounds like it started early on.
It did, and that's to me, that's what AMS is all about. I mean, you look back to the Fair Weather Report, which really brought in the AMS transformed into a science organization to really something that really brought in this whole partnership between the private sector, academia, and then the government sector. And that's kind of all I've known. I look back in history so when I joined the AMS, it was 30 years ago. In fact, 30 years ago was my first annual meeting when I was a master's student at Florida State. So I haven't made all the AMS conferences since, but I've tried to make as many as I could.
You're about to make one of your own.
This is true.
And one of the themes that you ran on was on sort of this evolution of the relationships between the private sector, the public sector, academia, all these partnerships that need to be forged, and AMS being a platform for making that happen or smoothing that out or just facilitating it. So how's that going to play into the meeting that you're making for 2022? Is that right?
That's correct. 2022, it'll be the first time, as far as I know, ever in Houston. So it's a new venue for us, which will be, it's fun going to this place the first time. It's also, there's some challenges there too, because we're going to have to figure out some things the first time. But with the AMS staff, they're fantastic, so I'm not to worry about that.
I have confidence in them.
But as far as the theme itself, I mean, the private-public partnerships in between academia and government as well, and the AMS, it's been a hallmark of the AMS for quite a while now. So I'm not really. I don't think that needs any help. It just needs continued prioritization and nurturing, and it's been growing really healthy. So, but the theme that I'm going to be organizing the 2022 annual meeting around is something that hasn't been done before. I got a really nice list from the AMS staff. Here's all the annual meeting themes for the last 20 or 30 years, and I looked and found a lot of things about Earth system prediction and observations, and some of them are repeated, but they're hallmarks of our career, of our discipline. So there's no not surprising that some of those have been retread and retweaked and a little bit different perspective. But the one I want to do is something that, and this is where I haven't put anything out in writing yet because I want to get the messaging right. So I guess I'm doing this stream of consciousness with you right now.
All right, let's do it.
So the title, which means different things to different people, that's why we have to explain what this means. But the working title for this sub-area is called environmental security. And so essentially that's national security or even human security implications of weather, water, and climate events. And so there are pillars underneath that have been, there's robust research and coordination among the interagency and also international in a lot of these areas already, including the AMS. Things like food security and water security. There's just the human security impacts on natural disasters. There's health, there's health implications there for weather and water and climate changes. So. My intent, what I'd like to do is to highlight those areas and really bring in some real tangible specifics about the importance of our discipline and what it means for all those. So you ask, back when I was coming up as a scientist, or what made me want to be a scientist when I was a kid, it was just right after the moon landings, and that really inspired me and a whole generation to be a scientist. But today, you ask a lot of the younger generation, the new students that are coming in and the early career folks, and it's wanting to make a difference in the world, and that's great. But there's some perspectives we don't see that can really make that really real and tangible, and not just in a scientific, esoteric sense, but through how it affects real people around the world. And so, one of the few good things about being in D.C. Definitely there's a lot of downsides. I already mentioned the traffic, but one of the good things about being there is you get exposure to a lot of international organizations and people in organizations inside the U.S. government that you get exposed to a lot of different perspectives. And so I've had the good fortune of being at some of these events where I'm only one of 2 or 3 physical scientists in the room of all these world experts, and to hear them with their perspectives on how it impacts the ability to them to support refugee support or dealing with famines in certain areas, and for them to tell us how important we are. It really resonated with me that, conceptually I knew that in a general sense, but hearing the specifics and how it relates to real people was really motivating. And I'd really like to bring that perspective and expose it to the whole AMS group. So we're just getting started. I don't have my I got a lot of volunteers already to help on the organizing committee.
Yeah.
So we got to put our messaging together to make sure that we don't put out a label that doesn't make sense. We want to make sure it translates right away. And then we'll be building our team to organize this conference for 2022.
Well, at a conference, you're not the only physical scientist in the room.
That's true.
But when you are forced into that role or are needed in that role as a trusted voice, right? And I think that's something you've mentioned about how AMS plays that role, or at least helps all of us play that role. How do you see that evolving over the next few years as we enter our new century?
I think the AMS has done a good job of staying in between the problem sets here. There are individuals are advocates for what they believe the political change should be, policy changes should be, and they exercise their right to vote and support political candidates that they want. On the other hand, there's just straight science. And I do believe that we've done a really good job in the AMS of providing that trusted voice that's not been seen as being tainted by politics, that when we talk with authority, no one looks at us and say, well, you have this leaning, therefore we don't believe what you say. And in this environment, I think that's really, really important. And so this is where the AMS, I believe, has it right. So for that area, I think I will want to continue. But however, having said that, there are some thoughts that we need to be a bit more active too. You saw our inspirational kickoff speech, and she wasn't pointing fingers at the AMS. She just was talking in general to the public. Let's be active, and a lot of our members feel that way too. So I think we do have an opportunity to up our game on our activity, but still not cross that line into partisan politics, where we can still remain that trusted voice of the science.
Also, I get the feeling that a lot of young people don't realize that the sciences, and in particular the sciences represented at this conference, are really an avenue for getting active in the world and making a difference in a way that a lot of scientists can't offer. But how do we get them to know that and look at this community as something that has a lot of opportunities for them?
Well, when you say opportunities, you're talking about job opportunities or opportunities to contribute in other ways?
Both. Just getting involved and satisfying that urge to make a difference in the world, which seems so common amongst the younger people here.
Well, the folks coming in now are, I think, more socially conscious. When I was coming in, I came in as like a lot of folks. I was attracted to science when I was younger for the science sake, and we need people like that. But now we got people who do that. It's not either or. They do the science for the interest in the science, and on top of that, they do it for making a difference. So I think really you're right. It's not about channeling. It's not about informing them of that. They already come in with that attitude. It's really giving them opportunities on how they can do that. So just that's why I want in our annual meeting in 2022, I want them to hear kind of the inside, the end state of, not end state, but the end of the value chain, if you will, of how what we do impacts other people. You know, you don't have to go out and, you know, work in Africa and set up tents. You can contribute to that whole value chain by what we do in our jobs, whether you're working on data assimilation or Earth system prediction or forensic science. There's contributions everywhere, but it's not just some intellectual exercise to imagine what that value chain might be. It actually exists, and we just don't see all the pieces. And so we want to bring some of those, you know, those people with different perspectives in to talk to us. AMS has done a really good job over the last few years of making this conference not just physical scientists talking to each other. We've expanded, you know, the network. We do have interdisciplinary people join us. So I think we just need to continue that evolution.
Is there one lesson you take away from this meeting in particular that you've seen? So I know you've been really busy behind the scenes and meetings and stuff, but something that's inspired you from this conference you're going to carry forward maybe in your conference in 2022?
You know, I can't say that there was one thing in this one. Every one I come to is great, and I learn a little bit more. All I can say is that there was a dinner at the beginning with the past presidents, and one of them, his advice was because all the meetings you have to go to, is just wear good shoes. So I learned that one early.
Yes.
No, I mean, I know it's a flippant comment, but I mean, in terms of what I've learned here, I'm learning from really good people in terms of this is my first foray into the AMS management level, and I'm following behind Jenny Evans and Mary Glack, and you know, people that I haven't known Jenny well, but certainly respected her and her career, and I've known Mary for a while, and I worked together with her at NOAA. So I've got really good people to follow behind and learn from them. So I'm just glad that this first meeting I could stay behind the scenes and learn, because there's lots to do between now and 2022.
All right, we can stand on some shoulders of giants and get a long ways in a hurry.
It's interesting you should say that. I got an email from an old friend of mine who he calls himself my academic grandfather. It's because he was my major professor, my advisor at Florida State was Eric Smith, who worked under Tom Vonderhaar, who in turn they both worked for, who got his PhD under Vern Suming. So he told me that. He goes, don't forget, you know, any role like that, you stand in the shoulder of giants and learn from them. That was his advice. So it's always good.
Good. Well, we will learn from you in a couple of years when you unveil all of this. I'm sure it's going to be really exciting, and good luck on your venture now as AMS President-Elect and then President.
Well, I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of years, especially working with all the volunteers and those across different portions of the AMS. You know, and it's going to be a big priority to continue what's done to my predecessors as well, to involve not just the experts and the graybeards, if you will, of who have done this for 20 or 30 years, but also to bring in early career and students through the whole part of the planning process and execution. So I really want to make that a big priority too, just like other have done before me.
We'll look forward to it. Thank you, Michael Farrar, for being on AMS on the Air.
All right, thank you.